Oh well, imagine that I'm pacing the pews in a church corridor, and I can't help but to hear.
Okay.
So, what do I know about Panic at the Disco?
That's not the band's name.
Well, what?
That's not what the band is called.
Sure it is. Panic at the Disco.
No, that's not it.
Of course it is. I'm looking right at it.
Look, you remember that movie from a couple years ago, directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring Jennifer Lawrence?
Oh, you mean Mother?
So why did you say it that way?
Well, because the title has an exclamation point at the end of it.
So look at the album again and tell me the name of the band.
Oh. Got it. Thanks, dude. Starting again. So what do I know about Panic at the Disco? Wait, what the hell was that?
Looked like Panic to me.
Well, I know that, but is that going to happen every time I talk about this band?
It might. Give it a shot. See what you get.
Okay. Panic! Big top suspenders. At the Disco. Huh. I guess it will.
Well, look at that. At least it's a decent band. Could be worse.
Well, I mean, I guess so. But you know that's not the band we're talking about today, right?
I do know that, and you need to stay focused. You were about to say what you knew about these guys. So, what do you know?
Not a blessed thing. As far as I can remember, I've never once heard anything by Panic at the Disco. Man, that's weird.
Stay on target, Gold Leader.
Right. Sorry.
Wasn't Astrid really into them for a while? Weren't you ever curious?
Not really. Maybe I should have been. Does that make me a bad person?
Isn't that why we're here? Look, start the album already. We've wasted enough time with this bit.
Well, I suppose you're right.
Okay, one more time. Get it out of your system.
Panic! At the Disco. Ooh, I'm starting to get into this.
Too bad. We're moving on now.
Oh.
And I can't help but to hear. No, I can't help but to hear an exchange of words.
What an album. I know in the last episode I talked a bit about kind of nostalgia baiting, and kind of my affinity for Britney Spears because of it. This album, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, takes that concept to a new level for me. As a very angsty 8th grader going through a lot, this album got me through a whole lot. So I'm kind of biased. I can't, when I was asked to choose albums for my dad for this season, I did a pretty good mix of albums that I've never listened to before and albums that I know and love that my dad hasn't heard before. And this is one of the latter. So I know this album inside and out, like the back of my hand.
I can't. There was too much. Hold on. Let me spin that again, because right now I got nothing.
And I can't help but to hear. No, I can't help but to hear an exchange of words.
I don't know what this album was like for you if you're already kind of into the emo scene that spawned it, but for me, listening to A Fever You Can't Sweat Out for the first time and the second time sounds like short attention span. There's synth noises and weird announcements and guitars and no guitars and auto-tune and lo-fi piano and some cellos and cabaret, and over it all is Riddlin' Roy, never once stopping to even catch his breath. Okay, one more time and then I think we'll have something we can talk about.
And I can't help but to hear. No, I can't help but to hear an exchange of words.
Okay, got it. Took some notes this time. First, how does it help anyone if your song titles are like an entire paragraph long?
So which was your favorite tune on this album?
Well, I kind of liked There's a Good Reason These Tables.
This is taking too long. I'm already bored. I'm going home. I belong in a museum.
As for the music itself, well, the interstitial pieces definitely use some musique concrète style collage techniques, which I always find interesting. The intermission piano piece was also musically interesting enough for me to try and learn a bit of it, or at least a solo arrangement of it for guitar, especially after all that synth excess dance music stuff that immediately precedes it. And the immediate change in tone and style from pop punk to a kind of Baroque rock cabaret after the intermission, that was kind of interesting as well. Especially on But It's Better If You Do, which has a really nice switch to swing time for the chorus. And the cabaret theme continues. It almost feels as if the group continues expanding all throughout side 2, slowly morphing into kind of like a big band, adding cellos for I Write Sins, Not Tragedies, and banjolele and trumpets for There's a Good Reason These Tables Are Numbered, Honey. You just haven't thought of it yet, though I suppose someone on staff could give you that information if it really bothers you. Wait here while I find the hostess. Meanwhile, why don't you look over the appetizers and decide on something for us? I trust your judgment. Just make sure to remember about your peanut allergy since you haven't refilled your EpiPen prescription since our last trip to the movies last week when you ate some of my Reese's Pieces thinking they were M&Ms and we had... They get it. The titles are long. The arpeggios are nice on I Constantly Thank God for Esteban as well. The pace of this album still feels way too hectic for me. It just feels like it's at full bore the entire time and it's hard to catch a breath. Got my work cut out for me this week.
I chimed in with a haven't you people ever heard closing the goddamn door?
I can understand where my dad's coming from when he says that a lot of the melodies, vocal melodies, are a little sing-songy, a little kind of elementary, if you will. I don't see it that way. That's just because of my own kind of bias and experience with the album, but I can understand that. It's not an album for everyone. It is an album for a very angsty 14-year-old. Sorry, Marzipan just took a spaghetti noodle from my bowl. Oh my god. Sorry about that. In terms of technicality, in terms of production, I agree with my dad, like I said before, but I enjoy some of the more creative aspects of it. They use instruments and sounds that aren't typically in the limelight, especially for pop punk. Their orchestration is pretty creative at times, you know. The album itself is pretty cohesive, you know. It's meant to be listened to as an album as opposed to random songs, so the songs have a really nice flow to them. They even have an intermission. So I enjoy some of the more creative, technical, like production aspects of the album. But overall, one of my favorite albums, I think. But again, I just have that bias. So yeah, definitely listen to it. It's fun.
Man, there are a lot of references on this album. Maybe not as many as on Lana Del Rey's Norman
Fishing.
Rockwell, but certainly a lot. So for example, the song Time to Dance refers to Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk. Palahniuk? And so does The Only Difference Between Martyrdom and Suicide is press coverage, although actually not many biblical martyrs took their... Just stop it already. Right. London Beckon's Songs About Money, written by Machines, reminds me a lot of Tinseltown Rebellion by Frank Zappa, especially in the way that they deal with the idea of a band's public-facing persona.
And hope the business don't collapse before some stupid magazine decides they're really good.
There's a quote from Natalie Portman from the movie Closer that goes, "Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off, but it's a lot better if you do." And those two are the songs on either side of the intermission on this album. So it's clear they like Closer. The themes and the atmosphere addressed in I Write Sins, Not Tragedies, they echo the absolutely beautiful and absolutely bleak movie Melancholia by Lars von Trier. But since the album came out in 2005 and the movie in 2011, we can't really call that a reference. Same with Nails for Breakfast, Tax for a Snack, which reminds me a lot of I Feel Fantastic by Jonathan Colton.
Right now, I feel fantastic, and I never felt as good as how I do right now. Except for maybe when I think of how I felt that day, when I felt the way that I do right now, right now, right now.
Which technically was released about a month before A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, but is not likely to be the source of inspiration for the song. I just hear similarities. Oh, and one more thing. Caricature? Caricature? Really? You're going to go on record, literally, with that pronunciation? Okay, wrapping up. It's been quite the exercise spending a week with Panic!
When a little wrangler was born.
At the disco. Ooh, nice Space Wrangler. I feel like I missed a ton. There was just so much. I also feel like this album illustrates clearly to me just how much music has changed in the past 40 years. Not just in style, but in how it gets to the people who enjoy it. When I was in 8th grade, I made cassettes off the radio, and I listened to Casey Kasem and Rick Dees' Top 40. For the folks in my 8th grade class, there wasn't an emo, there wasn't a pop punk, there was music made to appeal to 8th graders for sure, but it came in like 3 flavors: rock, country, and R&B. Now, it seems that bands can find the specific subculture within the broader 8th grade demographic and find music specific for them. And that's what this album feels like to me. And this is not me talking down. This is not me condescending. I don't think this is a bad thing. Astrid told me how important this album was to them at a very important time in their life. That fact alone is enough for me to be glad that this album exists. But the fact remains, I think that I'm much older than the intended audience for this album. You know, I don't ever see myself thinking, you know what would hit the spot right now? I could really go for listening to a spin of London Beckon songs about money written by machines for the express purpose of filling quotas established by a select committee of subject matter experts chosen for both their expertise and the market in their cumulative diversity of experiential and cultural backgrounds, resulting in a synergistic but ultimately end-user driven. Okay, that's enough. Cut him off.
Kinds of things with a sense of voice and rationality. I chimed in. Haven't you people ever heard of closing the goddamn door? No, it's much better to face these kinds of things with the sense of, oh, well, in fact, well, look at it this way. I mean, technically our marriage is saved. Well, this calls for a toast to pour the champagne. Oh, well, in fact, well, look at it this way. I mean, technically our marriage is saved. Well, this calls for a toast. So pour the champagne. Pour the champagne.